आप डेवऑप्स स्टार्ट करना चाहते हो बट बिगेस्ट कन्फ्यूजन इज वेयर शुड यू स्टार्ट, लिनक्स, डॉकर, कुबरनेट्स, AWS, जेनकिंस, टेराफॉर्म या मॉनिटरिंग। मोस्ट बिगिनर एक कॉमन मिस्टेक करता है, दे स्टार्ट लर्निंग डेवऑप्स टूल रैंडमली। आज डॉकर का ट्यूटोरियल देख लिया, कल कुबरनेट स्टार्ट कर दिया, उसके बाद किसी ने बोला टेराफॉर्म ट्रेंडिंग में है तो टेराफॉर्म भी स्टार्ट कर दिया। द रिजल्ट, आपको मल्टीपल टूल्स के नेम तो पता होंगे बट कंप्लीट डेवऑप्स वर्कफ्लो समझ नहीं आएगा। और इंटरव्यू में जब पूछा जाएगा एक्सप्लेन योर प्रोजेक्ट एंड टू एंड, तब आंसर क्लियर नहीं होता। इन दिस वीडियो आई विल गिव यू कंप्लीट स्टेज बाय स्टेज रोड मैप फ्रॉम अ जीरो नॉलेज टू योर फर्स्ट डेवऑप्स जॉब। For every stages, I will explain what you need to learn, why this skill is important, which practical project you build, and how the project like will help you in the interview. So whether you are fresher, college pass out, support engineer, developer, or someone moving from a non-IT background to IT background, this roadmap will give you clear learning direction. First of all, who is this roadmap for? This roadmap is for anyone who is targeting their first DevOps job. It can be useful for fresher, college pass out, non-IT people, support engineer, developer. But एक important condition. Only watching tutorial will not help you make a job ready. You need to do practice, you need to do build a project, and you need to push that project to GitHub. And most important, you should able to explain what you build. DevOps is a not a tool. सबसे पहले एक मिसकंसेप्शन क्लियर करते हैं, डेवऑप्स इज नॉट ए वन टूल, डॉकर इज ए नॉट ए कंप्लीट डेवऑप्स, कुबरनेट्स ए नॉट ए कंप्लीट डेवऑप्स, जेनकिंस, AWS, टेराफॉर्म, नन ऑफ देम इंडिविजुअली रिप्रेजेंट डेवऑप्स. DevOps is an end-to-end engineering workflow. It includes Linux, networking, Git, scripting, container, CI/CD, Kubernetes, infrastructure as a code, monitoring, logging, security, and AI-assisted troubleshooting. So these is our DevOps tool basically. Now come to a complete DevOps roadmap flow. Where should you start? You should start, suppose you have zero knowledge, you should start from a Linux, Git networking, Docker container, CI/CD pipeline, Kubernetes, cloud, Terraform, CloudFormation, monitoring, logging, security, AI, GitHub project, and resume build. First stage is your foundation stage. In this stage, you will learn Linux, networking, Git, shell scripting. Why this stage matter? You know, mostly all DevOps tools work on the Linux platform, all production and your environment, different environment work on Linux platform. And if you need to do any troubleshooting, you need all to do on the Linux platform. So Linux is most important. So you should learn Linux file system first, Linux permission, users and group, file ownership, process management, package management, system services, logs, SSH, basic networking, shell scripting, Git, GitHub, Git branching, pull request, and GitHub workbooks. In Linux file system basic, you should understand the directory structure like a home, etc, var, varlog, opt, user, and tab. In this simple meaning, like a ect like contain the configuration file, varlog contain the logs file, home is for the user data management, and opt for the third party tool, and temp is for the temporary files. In the Linux permission, you should understand read permission, write permission, execute permission, user, group, other permission, and chmod and chon permission as well. In the shell scripting, you should learn variable, if else condition, loops, function, arguments, exit code, log file, cron job, and after that you can make your own script that will check CPU, memory, and disk. So you have to clear understanding what you build according to your make your production ready or development ready script. In SSH basics, you need to understand SSH connections, what is the public key, what is the private key, PAM file, port, EC2, SSH login, how to do SSH, how to access the server using SSH. In networking basic, you should understand the IP address, DNS, ports, HTTP, HTTPS, TCP, UDP, subnet, CIDR, networking, firewall, load balancing, ping, curl command, telnet command, NSLOOKUP, and netstat. In the last Git and GitHub Actions, you should learn the all the Git tools, Git command, CLI like init command, clone, add, commit, push, pull, and branches, merge command, pull request, how to do a merge conflicts, like GitHub workbooks. So all these are the foundation stage. In the stage 1, you should create your own project, that is like create a nginx server, add some firewall rule, create a custom index file in nginx and run it on the server. After that, by implementing this project, you should able to understand how you build it, and you have clear understanding all the networking component, git component, as well as linux component. And post that, you can push your project to your github repository, so that you can showcase to your resume, so that you have built that project and you have clear understanding what you built. आफ्टर फाउंडेशन मूव टू द डॉकर. सो सबसे पहले अंडरस्टैंड करते हैं डॉकर क्या है. डॉकर बेसिकली आपकी एप्लीकेशन को एक पैकेज में कन्वर्ट करता है अलोंग इट्स अ डिपेंडेंसी, इंस्टॉल डिपेंडेंसी इन दैट पैकेज, सो दैट यू कैन यूज दैट डॉकर इमेज इन multiple environment, so that your application run consistently on the developer laptop, testing server and production server. So what should you learn in this docker thing? So first is container versus VM. What is docker image, docker container, docker file, compose, volume, networking, environment variable, multi-stage build, tagging, logs and debugging. And next is container versus VM. What is the main difference between both these? VM is a full operating system, container is a lightweight thing. And what is difference between docker image and container? Image is a blueprint of the application and container is running version of that image. And second thing is docker file, how to create a docker file of your application. It include basically image, dependency, application code, and export that code that you want to run. Next is multi-stage build, how to create a multi-stage docker file. The benefit is for the smaller image, faster deployment and the better security. And next is compose, how to run multiple container together, so that we will use a docker compose. For example, node.js application, database, redis and backend application, we can combine all these things in a docker compose file and run them simultaneously. And next is a docker volume. Why we use docker volume? What is the persistent data? So why it's helpful for the persisting the data? So we use a docker volume. And what is a docker networking? How to make a communication between same docker network, how same docker network talk each other. So docker networking is also important. In this lab, you can create your small project. You can take a Python or Node.js project, create a docker file and compose it. You can use a different component like a front end, back end, and make them up and make a docker image file and push to the GitHub repository, so that you can have a clear understanding about all the docker component. And post that, you can push that project to the GitHub to showcase your experience. After docker, learn CI/CD. DevOps is not about for manually deploying the code. DevOps is a automation deployment of the code in a different servers. In this CI/CD process, the main stages are build stage, test stage, docker image creation, image push, and then deployment. In this, you should learn CI/CD basics, GitHub Actions, what is YAML file, Jenkins file, stages, parallel stage, build pipeline, test pipeline, Docker build pipeline, how to push registry, Docker deploy to the EC2, blue-green deployment, and rolling based strategy. Next, you should learn what is meaning of the CI. CI is a continuous integration. It include like checkout of the code, testing of the code, build of the code, and create an image and then push that image to the ECR or any Docker hub. And next is CD. CD is a continuous delivery and deployment. In this, after building or testing, the application will deploy to the server. Next is GitHub Actions. What is code push? Basically, it's a action flow of the Git. Like first is a code push, then go to the workflow trigger, then after that code checkout happen, then install all dependency, run test cases, it will make a Docker image and push to the Docker hub and deploy it to the server finally. Same like a Jenkins pipeline, both are the same thing but different tools. In Jenkins pipeline, we will do same thing as we did in the GitHub. So in Jenkins pipeline, developer push the code, then GitHub workflow trigger, then Jenkins file run the different stages like a build, test, and push and deploy to the server. In parallel stages, there are multiple services like a unit test cases, security scan, linting check you can include with your pipeline to enhance your building process. And next is a blue green deployment. What is blue, what is green deployment? Blue is a current production, green is a new version of the deployment, like deploy a new version to the green, and then traffic switch to the blue to green deployment. So main benefits is to like a safe deployment and easy rollback, it contain less downtime. In this lamp you should implement full CI/CD pipeline flow like a push, test, build, include with pushing the image to the Docker Hub, and at the end you can push that project to the GitHub to showcase your skill. After Docker learn Kubernetes, Docker run the container, Kubernetes manage the container or scale the container. The benefit is for the scaling, rolling update, load balancing, and configuration management. So that's why we use Kubernetes. In this you should learn Kubernetes architecture, what is control plane, what is worker node, what is API server, scheduler, controller manager, etcd, kubelet, kube proxy, ports, replica set, services, config map, secrets, namespaces, what is ingress, what is liveness and readiness probe, what is HPA, Helm, and kubectl commands. Next is Kubernetes architecture, what is control plane and why we use worker node, what is the API server, how scheduler work, what is the controller plane, and what is the kubelet and kube proxy. The main Kubernetes objects are ports, deployment, replica sets, services, config map, secrets, ingress, and namespaces. Kubernetes service include with the cluster IP, node port, load balancing, and in probe you can use a liveness probe, readiness probe, and HPA is the autoscaler, like a horizontal port autoscaler. Helm is used for the package manager. And then in this lab you can deploy one application using a minikube. You can create a deployment file, service file, and scale that application using a deployment, and implement the readiness and liveness probe of the application and make them up in the Kubernetes cluster. Post that you can push that project in the GitHub repository to showcase your skill. Next stage is cloud. As a beginner, don't try to master AWS, Azure, GCP at the same time. Choose one primary cloud. My recommendation is AWS. Once AWS fundamentals are clear, you can understand the equivalent services in Azure and GCP. In AWS, you should learn these services I listed down. And if I talk about by simple meaning of each services, EC2 is for the virtual server, S3 is storage, IAM is user, role, policy, permission, VPC is a private network in AWS, public private network, NAT, internet gateway, all these things under VPC. RDS is a managed database. Under managed database, there are different databases, MySQL, SQL, and PostgreSQL. CloudWatch is used for the monitoring, logging, metrics, and alarm purpose. And load balancing is for the distributed traffic, and security group is for the manage the firewall of the AWS sources. In GCP, you should know Compute Engine, GKE, GCS, Cloud Run, IAM, monitoring, logging, and artifact registry. In Azure, you should learn virtual machine, AKS, blob storage, Azure DevOps, resource group, Azure monitor, Azure container registry. If I talk about cloud security, you should learn least privilege policies, IAM role, MFA, key rotation, security group, public and private network, subnets, secrets management, how to avoid root account uses, and make sure do not commit any access key to GitHub repository or any other repo. For cost optimization, you should learn how to create a billing alarm, how to set up a budget alerts, free tier limit, spot instances, saving plan, how to delete unused resources, how to stop unused EC2 instances, remove unused disk or IP addresses. So yeah, this is all in cloud, all three clouds. And if I talk about lab, you can deploy same application that you did it on the previous section. You can use AWS or GCP service Like if you talk about AWS, you can use EC2, S3 bucket, CloudWatch, and in GCP you can use Compute Engine and GCS for storage. You can combine all these services and make a project run on these two clouds, and then you can compare the costing of these clouds and how these two clouds having different comparison with the deployment and monitoring experience. After that, you can push that project it in GitHub. नेक्स्ट स्टेज इज इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर एज ए कोड. एज ए बेस्ट प्रैक्टिसेस हम इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को कभी भी मैनुअली सेटअप नहीं करते, उसके लिए हम कोड यूज़ करते हैं जिसे कहते हैं इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर एज ए कोड. बेसिकली इट कंटेन टू टूल्स, टू सर्विस विच इज़ Terraform and Ansible. In a simple term, Terraform is used for provisioning the infrastructure, like if you want to create a VPC, subnet, EC2, security group, or any other resources in AWS, you can use a Terraform. And if you want to configure that service under that server, you need to use a Ansible, like install Nginx. Some if you want to install Docker, like contain any, start any service, or configure any user, so we use Ansible. In Terraform, you should learn what is HCL, providers, resources, variable, output, what is state file, modules, remote backend, S3 backend, and different set of Terraform command. And next, Terraform state. What is the state? Like it contain, like store the information of the infrastructure, and it track basically what's going to change, what should be updated, what should be destroyed. And in remote backend, so basically it prevent two people changing the infrastructure at the same time. So it contain with the S3 combination of S3 and DynamoDB service. In Ansible topics, you should learn inventory, playbook, task, handler, variables, roles, and SSH connection. In simple term, I can say that Terraform and Ansible, Terraform create VPC, subnet, and security group and EC2, and Ansible configuring that service under the server, like if you want to install Nginx service and set up firewall or configure the user under the server, we can use Ansible. In this lab, you can build both these stages, like a Terraform, Ansible. You can provision the VPC, security group, subnets, and if you want any other resources, you can use a Terraform for that, and you can take a sample of deploying any application on EC2, you can use Ansible. At last, in GitHub, you can push your project under GitHub to showcase. Next stage is production readiness. It include monitoring, logging, security, and AI assisted DevOps. Code deploy करना last stage नहीं है, because development or production need monitoring, logging, alerting, security scanning, secret managing, and troubleshooting as well. If I talk about monitoring, it simply tell you is the application is running, is CPU is high, is memory is high, is latency is increasing, or error increasing, or are ports restarting. In monitoring, we can use Prometheus. It is basically used for collecting the metrics. For example, CPU uses memory, request count, error count, latency, or port restart count. And next is PromQL. PromQL is a query basically. It used for querying the metrics. You can get like a CPU uses, HTTP error rate, request latency, and port restart count. And next is Grafana. Grafana is basically UI visualizing, where we can create a dashboard for the tracking the CPU, memory, disk, and all these services error rate. Next is alert management. Alert manager sends the alert to configure the webhook with a Slack or any email address. Next is logging. Logging simply help to tell you what error happened, when did it happen, its service failed, which request failed, like that. And next is ELK stack. ELK is a simply Elasticsearch Logstash Kibana. In simple term, Elasticsearch store the logs, Logstash process that log, and Kibana visualize that log on the dashboard. And important thing, FileBit, basically it's collect the log and send to Elasticsearch or Logstash basically. And next is security. Under security, you should learn how to do the scanning of the Docker image, how to do secrets management, how to manage the least privilege, and how to don't hardcode the secret in any other open source repository or GitHub repository. And next is Trive. Trive is basically open source tool you can install in your CI/CD pipeline to scan your Docker image for the vulnerability purpose. And next is HashiCorp Vault. is it's basically used for the storing the password, token, access key in the application. And next is AI assisted DevOps. In AI, basically it help a lot in DevOps. You can use AI open source tool to track down the pipeline error. You can use a chat GPT for the Kubernetes YAML generation or any incident analysis or documentation or any command suggestion. In this lab, you can create a build complete observability stack with the monitoring, logging, and security. You can simple deploy on one application in Kubernetes and configure the Prometheus, Grafana, and set up the alerts. And last, you can push that project in the GitHub to showcase. Next stage is project strategy. Before applying for a job, you don't need multiple copied project. You can use all these three strong projects that are combination of all the services. In project one, you can combine Docker, CI/CD, EC2. That will cover your Docker, Compose, GitHub Actions, Docker Hub, EC2, and all these services. You can make your own project and commit to GitHub. In project two, you can use a Kubernetes scaling plus self-healing service. It cover Kubernetes deployment, service replica, HPA, and all these services. And in project 3, you can use a Terraform, Ansible, and monitoring security. It will cover Terraform, VPC, EC2, Ansible, Grafana, and all these three services. And next, job ready beginner checklist. Before applying any job, make sure you can explain from yourself. Like you should know what is the Linux command, what is shell scripting logic, and how to create a branching, how to manage the branching in Git, what is the commands, how to create a Docker file, how to create a Compose file, how to create a CI/CD pipeline, how to create a Jenkins file or Jenkins job, how to manage the cloud basics, how to manage the IAM roles, users and group policy, how to create a Terraform TF files, and how to manage the states, how to make Ansible playbooks, how to manage the Prometheus and Grafana, and how to do the security level stuff. And next is what not to do. Don't start Kubernetes basically before Docker. This is a thumb rule. And don't learn 20 tools without any project. Make sure you don't copy any project without any understanding. Don't keep your GitHub empty. Make sure what you done in your project, you must be push that project in GitHub repository. And do not write I know DevOps. Please be specific what you have done with your project basically. And next is do not commit any secrets in GitHub repository, and don't ignore Linux and networking stuff because this is the core of the DevOps. And do not learn all cloud deeply. Start with the AWS and then see the equivalent services on Azure as well as on GCP. And make sure you should build your own project and commit to GitHub to showcase in your resume. And next is best learning order. Learning order is like you can start with Linux, networking, GitHub, shell scripting, Docker Compose, CI/CD, Jenkins, Kubernetes, Cloud, Terraform, Ansible, monitoring, logging, security, and last is AI assisted DevOps. I also mentioned simple 3-month roadmap plan. In month 1, you can combine foundation plus Docker stage, where you should learn Linux, networking, Git, shell scripting, Docker Compose, and build a small project. In month 2, you can combine CI/CD, Kubernetes, and cloud. Under this, you should learn GitHub Actions, Jenkins, CI/CD pipeline, AWS EC2, Docker Hub, Kubernetes, and you can set up your own Kubernetes cluster in Minikube in your local system, and you can make your build on project. In month 3, you can combine Terraform, Ansible, and monitoring, and this will cover Terraform, Ansible, Prometheus, Grafana, and security stuff as well. At last, final message for you guys who want to do your search your DevOps job. Please do not just learn tool, build your own project. Make sure your GitHub repository contain multiple project, and make sure you maintain readme file in particular GitHub repository, and add the required screenshot or architecture or what you solve the problem during the project. Make sure you mention everything in the GitHub repository. That's it, friends. This was the complete overview of our zero to first DevOps job roadmap. I'm creating a complete step-by-step practical DevOps series of each stages for this roadmap. Each topic from a DevOps and Docker to CI/CD, Kubernetes, AWS, Terraform, monitoring and security will be covered in separate detailed video inside the playlist. So subscribe my channel and turn on notifications so that you will notify whatever the next video is published. So save this playlist and follow the complete roadmap in correct sequence. I'll see you in next video. Till then, keep learning, keep building. Bye bye.